Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to drink some Death Wish coffee and we're going to talk about rifle cartridges. This is the medium roast. Kind of defeats the purpose getting the strongest coffee in the world and not in dark roast but in medium roast. By the way, this is not the strongest coffee in the world. It's pretty good. Actually has a really good flavor. And I do enjoy it, but I've had way stronger coffees. Maybe the dark roast is where it's at. It's pretty good though. So I want to talk about a few topics today. So I've been talking about my last 3 episodes of Hall of Fame cartridges. And I did the 7mm class cartridges. I picked 4 to go in the Hall of Fame. Then I did the 30 caliber, which I picked 5 and then I changed it later and I made it 6. And then I did the 6.5 caliber and I did 5 there. And I will say there's a lot of cartridges in those calibers that I'm sure will eventually get there. A lot of new ones especially that more than likely are going to cement their place into that field and are going to be very successful, and probably some I picked eventually will drop out. So the Hall of Fame is kind of a fluid thing. It can come and go. I was going to continue that series, the Hall of Fame series. I just don't feel like there's any other caliber set that there's enough to talk about. You know, I can name a lot of cool 22 caliber cartridges, but do they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Maybe, maybe not. Definitely the 223 and the 22-250 definitely do. Should there be a 17 class or a 20 caliber Hall of Fame? I don't really think so, but maybe. I mean, if there's enough interest out there, I definitely will. If you want to see one of those, please leave it in the comments and I will do the research. I will admit to you right now, I don't have a whole lot of experience with 17 caliber. I do love my 204 Ruger, but as far as I know, there's only 2 cartridges in that caliber. I talked a lot about the 6mm class. You know, this might offend some people, but the only one I think of that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame is the 243. There's tons of good ones in the long-range shooting competition world. You know, you've got your 6mm Remington, you've got the Creedmoor, which I'm a big fan of. I just don't think any of them really deserve to be in the Hall of Fame except for the 243. Maybe I'm wrong. When I think about the 25 caliber, the first ones that jump out to me, and this is, I'm not saying they should be in the Hall of Fame, but I think about, you know, the 250 3000 Savage, first cartridge to ever go over 3,000 feet per second. Does it deserve to be in the Hall of Fame though? I don't think so. I think of the 257 Roberts, cool cartridge. Just a 7 Mauser neck down to 25 caliber, cool cartridge. Does it deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? I don't think so. It's not relevant anymore. The only 2 cartridges I could even think of, probably the 25-06 and the 257 Weatherby. When I think of the 27 caliber, I really only think of 3, maybe. 1 for sure. The 270 absolutely is in the Hall of Fame for sure. And then, you know, I'm a big fan of the 270 short mag, so maybe I'm biased. It's probably just on the outside looking in, and the 27 Weatherby probably deserves to be in there. So I could think of 2, maybe 3, but there's just not a lot there. You know, is there enough cartridges in the 8mm family to really talk about? I don't really think so. There is some good ones, but when I think of the 33 caliber, the only one I know for sure I think should be in there is a 338 Win Mag. You know, there's a lot of other good ones though. The 340 Weatherby, the 338 Lapua. There's definitely some good ones, but do they really deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? And you can just keep getting bigger and bigger. I definitely think the 375 H&H needs to be in the Hall of Fame. Definitely think the 4570 needs to be in the Hall of Fame. I definitely think the 50 BMG needs to be in the Hall of Fame. But that's just kind of an overall Hall of Fame. And really, none of those calibers to me have enough there to talk about. So wanted to just bring it up to you and say that's some of my inductees into my personal Hall of Fame. But I'll probably end the series there, but there's some really cool cartridges out there. All right, next topic. Who do you think is the best cartridge developer? So I don't mean just manufacturer, but I mean developer. Drew up the plans, decided on the shoulder angle, decided on the overall length, decided what the preferred twist rate would be, actually drew out the dimensions of the chamber and the cartridge. What do you think's the best? And I'd say most of you know, but if you don't know, usually the word after the numerical part of the title is the developer, like 308 Winchester, 7mm 08 Remington. In our modern day, you might have the 6.5 Creedmoor, the 6.5 PRC, and those titles have nothing to do with Hornady, who's the one that developed them. But used to be, that's what they all did. What do you think is the best? Which one is your favorite? My immediate response when I ask myself the question is Winchester. And I'm going to go with that, but it seems like in the last 20 years it's been Hornady. So I just want to talk about that today. It's interesting if you think about it. It's kind of like every manufacturer had its own niche, had its own philosophy that would correspond to all of the cartridges, except for Remington and Winchester, and I'll get to those in a second. But you think about Nosler. It was pretty clear that Nosler was going after velocity, okay? And they took this philosophy from Weatherby, who did it way, way in the past. Weatherby was all about velocity. He was the king of velocity. Let's make this thing go faster. Let's have our cartridge in every caliber be the fastest, the flattest, and that's a cool thing to do. For most, but not all, of Weatherby's cartridges, he used the 375 H&H as the parent case. Had that belt on there. It was just known for being a powerhouse. Nosler, many decades later, kind of went with a little bit more efficient design, kind of took that 300 rum case, which came from the 404 Jeffries, but took that rum case and kind of based most of its cartridges off of that. But Nosler and Weatherby are definitely known for velocity and for a lot of powder. Hornady here recently has become known for accuracy and for high BC bullets. Now, if you go back around the beginning of the 2000s, 2004 to the 2007 area, some of their first cartridges weren't actually like that. I think of the 204 Ruger. I think of the 375 Ruger. Those cartridges weren't specifically designed for heavy, high BC bullets. But that kind of started a trend, and then beginning, I would say, with the 30TC, they started to try and focus on accuracy. And then with the 6.5 Creedmoor, and then the 6mm Creedmoor, then the PRCs and all that's come hereafter, they've been focused on long range. So Hornady's become the long range developer and manufacturer. Remington and Winchester are by far the two biggest, okay? Savage has made a few, Federal's made a few, and there's other ones too. But Winchester and Remington are definitely the biggest. They have produced the most. Now, in all honesty, not every cartridge that they came out with really was that big of a deal. You think of a 25-06 or the 7mm 08, those are just existing cases that was neck down to a smaller caliber and had already been done so by wildcatters for a long time, but they were just standardized by Remington. And Winchester did the same thing with some of its. So some were just neck down or necked up versions that they standardized and put their name on the back. Other times they did take an existing case, like the 7mm Remington Magnum, which came once again from the 375 H&H, kind of made it their own and made a pretty cool cartridge out of it for Remington. Or you think of Winchester, taking the 404 Jeffries, shortening it, changing a few little minor things, and coming out with the WSM cartridges. Kind of already took what was there, but made it into something new. But then you got cartridges that they just flat out developed from the beginning. Like in Winchester, the 284. And of course, as gun and rifle manufacturers, handgun manufacturers. Remington, Winchester, they go way back, you know. But when I think back to like the 1800s, I can't think of a whole lot of Remington designs that were made or are still out there. But definitely I can name some Winchester ones like the 3030. Winchester seems to have more of a pedigree and a rich history of cartridge design going further back. Not to say they're older or they're a better gun manufacturer, but just as far as cartridge developing, have a richer history. If you compete Winchester head to head with Remington, a lot of the times Winchester won. I think of the 243 just absolutely trouncing the 6mm Remington, actually the 244 at the time, the 244 Remington. I think of the 300 WSM just trouncing the 300 short action Ultra Magnum. I think about when the 280 was trying to be introduced, but it just couldn't compete with the 270 Winchester. Of course, there are exceptions, like the 7 Rim Mag just totally destroying the 264 Win Mag. But generally speaking, the most popular cartridges tended to be Winchester, whether it's the 300 Win Mag, the 308, the 243. They just seem to be the more dominant cartridge manufacturer. But you can't overlook the 223 from Remington. Of course, their brand new design, the 222, spawned the 223 and the 222 Magnum. And the 223, of course, being adopted in the Armalite rifle, later in the M16, you know, and then of course in our AR-15s today. It's just unbelievably popular. Probably, you know, the most popular cartridge in the world, I would say it is, besides like a 22. As far as centerfire ammunition, I would say it's the most popular, with the 308 being number 2 probably, but the 223 is the most popular. So overall, Winchester probably gets the edge, but Remington definitely has some gems, definitely has won its share of battles too. Of course, Remington is kind of no more. It has been bought and is going to be coming back with a different owner. Winchester still exists. Of course, they've been bought out too many times, but they exist. They're owned by F&N, and F&N is owned by someone who's owned by someone who's owned by someone, but basically F&N owns Winchester and Browning. And Browning, in my opinion, kind of runs the show over here in North America for itself and Winchester. And a lot of your newer cartridges developed by Winchester are co-developed by Browning, and I kind of feel like Browning is more of the person behind it. But the Winchester name on a cartridge is much more famous and more notable and more common than a Browning name at the end of a cartridge. So you look at your 6.8 Western, you look at your 350 Legend. I mean, Winchester, through Browning, is still in the game, still making cool cartridges. But the new kid on the block, in my opinion, is definitely Hornady. Now, they've had, you know, bullets for a long time. They've been a very famous company for a long time. But in the early 2000s, their relationship with Thompson Center and then Ruger really started putting out some cool cartridges. And now they've kind of just taken over. And the 6.5 Creedmoor, the 6.5 PRC, the 300 PRC, the 375 Ruger, the 204 Ruger, even the Ruger Compact Magnums and the 30 TC. You know, not all of them have been successes, but they've all been good cartridges. They've kind of all been efficient. They've all definitely been modernized. They've all been thinking about fast twist barrels and long, heavy, high BC bullets. And they've all been thinking about long-range accuracy. Because that's kind of where the market's going. The market's going about more and more long range. More and more people are shooting at long range for fun, competition, even hunting, though that's an ethical discussion for another day. But the future and the market has definitely shifted toward long range, and Hornady has kind of stepped up and become, in my opinion, the predominant maker of cartridges and developer of cartridges today. Weatherby's still around, of course. They've kind of moved away from the double radius Venturi shoulders and going off all the belted Magnum cases. And the most two noteworthy cartridges they've developed recently is the 6.5 Weatherby RPM and the 338 Weatherby RPM, which me personally, I'm a fan because I'm a big fan of the 284, and those cartridges came from the 284. So they're still making cartridges. Nosler, I don't know, I haven't heard of a new one, but I'm sure that they're thinking about something. So I think everyone's still in the game, except for maybe Remington. Everyone's doing some cool stuff. So I think the greatest of all time has got to be Winchester. But the most relevant today, and the new kid on the block, is definitely Hornady. And then there's still some cool cartridges coming out for some cool brands like Weatherby and Nosler. Just curious to know what you think. Who is your favorite cartridge developer of all time? And also, where do you think we're going? What's the new cartridge going to be? I mean, the newest one, of course, is the 7PRC that's coming out by Hornady. More than likely, it's going to be a success, whether it deserves it or not, just how popular that those cartridges have become. I would say it's going to have merit to it, and I would say it's going to be good. Where do you see this going? What's your opinions on the long-range trend of cartridge developing? What's the next frontier? What's the next phase in cartridge development? Any ideas? I don't know. What do you think? And who will be the leader? Who will be the one that's behind the scenes making the developing? Pretty interesting questions. Hopefully you got time to comment. If you like this video, please like it and give your comments, and then please subscribe. Trying to grow my channel to 1,000 subscribers, and I could use your help. I've enjoyed talking to you. I've enjoyed drinking Death Wish coffee. And until next time, take care.